Hi, welcome to ABA-ish, my channel that's dedicated to giving caregivers real-life options for support that are likely to work because they're rooted in science. I'm Dr. Billy Retzloff, and today we're going to be talking about how you as a caregiver can use signals to address situations in which your kid is maybe testing you often. So I don't have a great word for this, but I think as caregivers, it's kind of one of those things we all know when we see. You tell your kid that it's going to be bedtime in 5 minutes, and then when 5 minutes comes, they try to push it a little bit longer. Or you tell them that they need to go brush their teeth, and they're going to try and find their way to do other things instead. And so these situations in which your kid is really not mapping on their behavior to what you want from them as quickly as possible. And one thing that we can really do as caregivers to help our kids know how to behave and increase the likelihood that they behave that way right when we ask them to is to have really clear signals to them about what needs to be happening. So it's really important to understand that it's okay that we need these types of signals because we all need our behavior to be different in different situations. It's actually a really great life skill to start learning how to match your behavior onto the situation. Now, I'm not saying you have to be disingenuous or pretend to be somebody that you're not, but I definitely don't talk the same at my work as I do when I'm with my friends, and that's okay. We're mapping our behavior onto the situation. However, it can be really, really challenging to learn how to map onto those different situations, especially because you have a lot more nuance in them, right? You have to be paying attention to social cues and situational cues. There's a lot you have to pay attention to figure out what type of behavior is right. And as adults, we don't always get that right. So, our kids are going to learn how to do this best when there are clear signals to them that are always or almost always tied to specific outcomes. So, basically, what I mean is if you're going to start using signals like this with your kid, which I hope you do, don't give that signal unless you really are certain that the outcome is going to happen. So let's go through a few examples so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm going to share 4 signals that I actually use with my own children and tell you how I use them so that you can see how they could maybe apply to your life. So the first signal is labeling something as a choice versus a have to. So an example of this would be if my daughter asked me if it's bath night. If she hasn't taken a bath in a while, I might tell her that it's a have to, meaning no matter what, we are going to be taking a bath. Or I might tell her that it's a choice, meaning she can let me know if she wants to do it or not. We use this all the time. There can be times that it's a choice to go somewhere and do something versus a have to do it. There are times that it's a choice to participate in a family event versus times that it's a have to. And so what's really important is that when I tell my daughter or my son or whoever I'm working with that something is a have to, I need to have a plan of how I'm going to follow through, even if the child isn't compliant with that. So, what is that going to look like? What strategies am I going to use to make sure that we end up doing that thing, even though they are not necessarily being 100% on board with it? Because I've told them it's a have to. And what I find is that then once you start using this language and you're very clear when it's a choice, if they say no, you absolutely honor that. And when it's a have to, you have a plan for following through. Your kids will start to map on their behavior where when you tell them something is a have to, they will do it really quickly. When you tell them something is a choice, they will, make their own decision about that. And that comes from the fact that they can know and it's consistent that when I say something is a have to, it means we're going to do it. Another example that I use with my own kids is saying that something is a safety skill or a safety rule. What this means is it's a rule that I am not going to remind them about. And if they break that rule, I'm going to very quickly intervene as their parent. So we've talked about this, we practice these things, and they know that a safety rule is not one that I'm going to say, hey, remember, this is the rule, and I'm going to provide lots of reminders. But instead, if a safety rule is broken, we might stop the activity or I might physically intervene quickly if necessary. So, an example of this is around water. If you're by a pool or a lake, there are going to be safety rules about where a child can go. So, we were just recently up at a little vacation on a lake house, and we had a safety rule that you were not allowed to go out on the dock without a life jacket. If my child broke that safety rule, I would very quickly go and physically intervene. It's not something that I'm going to take the time to yell, hey, you're not supposed to be doing that, and talk to them about it because it's a safety rule. In our house, safety rules are non negotiables. We talk about them ahead of time, we practice them so the kids know and understand them. But when it comes to implementation, we have a very short kind of threshold for physically intervening and stopping it. compared to like some other rules, like maybe sharing with a friend. That might be something that we do work through together and give a little more leeway because it's not a safety rule. Other safety rules that we have are things like wearing a helmet when you're riding a bike, rules surrounding the road and what you can and cannot do in the road. So, those things that are really, really critical. It's super important that you only label something as a safety rule or a safety skill when it truly is, because it means that you are going to intervene immediately if it's broken as the parent. So I don't immediately need to intervene physically if my kid isn't sharing. There's times that I can use other strategies there because it's not safety related. Helping kids understand that these safety rules have a different response from the caregiver is really important because it can be really kind of evocative of negative behavior if I all of a sudden go and physically intervene quickly when my kids are used to getting warnings. So, telling them something is a safety skill or a safety rule is a great way to teach them that you are going to have a kind of short threshold for intervening. Another phrase that I use with my family is limited options. So I let my daughter know, if she requests something, I can say, we can do that, but we have limited options. She knows that that means I'm going to tell her the full scale of what's available. A lot of times I love to negotiate with my kids, actually. I like to teach them those skills and help them understand how and when you can negotiate effectively. And so telling them about our limited options helps them to understand that there isn't this wide range of things they can ask for. It can be a yes, but we have limited options and here they are. Again, I only use that phrase when there's truly limited options. So if we're in a situation in which our kids could think of something else to offer us, we shouldn't use that phrase limited options. Instead, it's something like, we only have these 3 fruits available. I can't get you any more, so we have limited options. I'm making sure that I'm following through with those are our only choices. Similarly, with my family, I use a phrase which is the final offer. So, what I mean by that is, have you ever gotten in those situations where you and your kid are kind of like going back and forth and you're trying to get them to do something and they don't want to do it? And it's kind of this like ongoing debate or negotiation. In those cases, eventually I will get to a point where I tell my kid, this is the final offer. You can do X or you can do Y, or we can do X or we can do Y, whatever it looks like. I lay out a final offer to them, usually in the form of a choice. And then we know that if you don't pick one of those, mom's going to pick one for you. So it kind of signals that this is the end of negotiation. Again, I have to follow through with that. I can't keep negotiating with you after I say final offer. I need to make sure that it's clear that this is my final offer. So, hopefully, this was helpful in giving you some ideas of how you can use really clear signals to your kids to let them know when things are going to have to go a certain way. Again, these are just 4 examples that I use in my own life and thought might be helpful for you, but there's lots of words or phrases you can use to signal to your kid when something has to happen or is going to happen or a choice needs to be made. Just be sure that when you do that, you are always following through. So don't say something as a have to and then not do it. Don't call something a safety rule and not immediately intervene if the rule is broken. Don't say limited options when all of a sudden you're going to have a whole bunch of other choices. And don't say final offer if you plan to continue to negotiate, right? The key here is that the kid learns to protect that when mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or whoever the caregiver is uses one of these phrases, that there's a certain set of follow through that is always going to happen. That helps them not test you because they know that that follow through is there. I hope this was helpful, and if you liked it, please subscribe and share with others who may enjoy the content as well. Have a great day.